Before we get into the next hero, I will note that the soldier, the sharpshooter, and the mage are relatively low complexity heroes inside of AnarKings. This next batch of heroes has a lot more complexity to them, and they trade a lot of the auras and self-sufficiency that was seen previously, or army supportive aspects, for something that has more outplay potential. And nowhere can I think of as a better start than this character imported from One Shot, Niko. The best way to describe Niko is a bit of a conundrum. Niko is a short-range spellcaster, capable of attacking from very, very low distances by default, but nevertheless having an appreciable 30 damage. But with this low health points, and its very low mana, and even the range is not stellar, what can Niko actually do? Surely there's more to it than this. So, let's get into that. The best way to conceptualize Niko is as a hybrid caster, but not in the red mage from Final Fantasy sense where they can do everything at once. Instead, Niko swaps between two modes. The first mode, which we are on by default, is healing mode, support, right? Giving agency, giving buffs, things of that nature. And the second mode is DPS mode. Let's go over the healing mode first. Niko in this mode has two active abilities, Bolt of Light and Pancake. Bolt of Light is a healing line of damage that actually just heals allied units that run through it. Because it is a line, it shares the properties of the fireball in that if a unit is running away from you, it is more likely to be healed for more. If it is standing still, it will heal for less. The second ability, which you just saw me use, is Pancake. One of the more powerful abilities in the game. This hefty 11-second cooldown comes with some amazing perks. Pancake heals any unit that is struck by it for 45 damage. All of them in a range, at quite an appreciable range too. Let's go ahead and cast it here. In addition, notice the yellow highlight that indicates a buff around these units. Units that are struck by a Pancake, including Niko themselves, gain a bonus movement speed of 0.75 for up to 2.5 seconds. This means that in terms of keeping your allied units alive or keeping Niko themselves alive, it is very possible to use the heal mode to not only heal army units in a meaningful way, as we just did there for these two footmen, but also to heal yourself and get out in a pinch. Notice the bonus movement speed as we run away, and the wave is even stronger now than it used to be. The next thing we're going to do is look at this curious third ability, and it's called Swap. Swap changes from DPS mode to heal mode, and vice versa. So let's just press it and see what happens. Well, we still have two abilities here, but they work a little differently. Instead of Bolt of Light for healing, we now have Bolt of Smite. If you're perceptive, you might figure out exactly what it does, which is it operates on the inverse principle. A short purple line of damage goes out, dealing damage to any allied or to any enemy units that are in the way. Let's cast it here so you can see. The second ability, Molotov, is kind of the opposite of Pancake. Whereas Pancake heals the units that are struck with it in an AoE, Molotov just damages them. Let's take a look. That's pretty good damage, and if you saw the AoE, it's quite sizable. We have another swap ability. This is the challenge of Niko fundamentally, is to swap between four basic abilities that are basically two abilities but mirrors of one another, and to use that in a limited mana pool to extract value. Niko is very good at dueling enemy heroes and very good at getting a lot of value, diving in and escaping. And all of this is without talking about Niko's ultimates. Yes, you heard correctly, ultimates, plural. We're going to go over both of them. So the first ultimate is going to be Chains. Chains says as follows, Niko doubles their base regeneration rate. Pretty good, as you can see the mana that Niko has already burnt through here, despite gaining 3 levels, has very little mana with which to do the shenanigans you saw earlier, right? But this ability, Chains, adds a third ability to both the healing mode and the damaging mode that can only be seen to truly be believed. Notice we are in healing mode again, and we have access to the Chain of Light. If Bolt of Light heals, then chains are best described as a consecutive series of bolts of their given type. let's go ahead and take a look. It looks like there are some units here that are taking damage and could really do with some healing. So let's go ahead and keep them alive. And then we can cast our chains. Notice that we are healing everything that is in the way of the chains of light. Let's get another go when we have a try and use some abilities in the meantime, taking advantage of the extra mana regeneration rate. You can see. Now, Chain of Light, which heals in a line as a kind of concussive wave of bolts of light, actually shares a cooldown with this, the Chain of Smite. Chain of Smite is very powerful against buildings for the reasons you might well imagine. It consistently activates the Bolt of Smite against a given set of targets. Let's be fair and just attack this way. Notice the consecutive damage that was dealt over there to these spiders. We can also use this to attack, of all things, buildings. And this makes the buildings very, very strong if you want to heal them with the chains, or very likely to die if you want to damage them with the chains. Let's wait another 5 seconds and see how we can contribute even with minimal mana into the DPSing down of this tower. There you go. That's just a good sign. Now, the second ultimate that Niko has is the World Machine. The World Machine kind of just gives Niko the biggest steroid you could ever ask for. We're talking some armor, some damage, lots of mana regeneration rate in a pinch, and hit point regeneration. So that if you ever are a Niko kind of stuck in this position here, you can just activate the World Machine to get a lot more stats. What this does is these two ultimates are binary. You must choose one or the other. If you choose the chains, you get both the chains of light and the chains of smite. The ability to burst down buildings very quickly, to kill trapped heroes very quickly, and also to heal very large units because of the way that damage ticks and heals tick inside of AnarKings. If, however, you pick the World Machine, you are choosing to activate an ability that makes you far more of a dive and assassin-like character. This kind of duality is difficult to manage, but if you do manage to do it, I think you will find Niko to be one of the more powerful and more interesting characters inside of AnarKings. If I had to point out a weakness for all of this power, it would be that the APM intensivity of the AnarKings hero Niko makes it difficult to control an army and have a lot of map vision at the same time that you're using them. But if you think you can overcome that, or you can do enough with the power at your disposal that that weakness is not applied, then maybe you'll have something fun to do with the short-range mode-shifting King Spellcaster, Niko. In sharp contrast to the selfishness of the soldier, the Oathbroken, whose visage is very similar to that of the soldiers, could not possibly be more selfish. This is a very complex melee character who has forsaken the opportunities of army combat and supportive play to be something that is fully engaged on the destruction of small units, isolated heroes, and anything else that gets in its way. This Oathbroken is also unique in a very particular fashion. That is that the Oathbroken is really not much of a hero without their ultimate. So once we do get the ultimate, buckle in, because there's a lot more left to learn. The first thing to note about the Oathbroken is its passive, Life Untold. Life Untold is what's giving this armor value from 3 to 4. Life Untold gives not only 4 armor, but also makes all of the Oathbroken heroes' attacks, actual attacks, not abilities, have 20% lifesteal. And this combines naturally with their high base 37 damage at level 1. You will be healing 7.4 damage per hit if you are playing the Oathbroken, and with its 500 health and 7 armor, this means that the Oathbroken has maybe not the stickiness of a soldier, but a lot of the survivability that you would have not expected elsewhere. Now, once we've gotten past that ability of Life Untold, here's another thing that you should note. Life Untold also does burning damage to enemies that are surrounded by it. Let's take a look, shall we? Notice that these slithers don't have much damage or any of them on them at all. As soon as we get near them, we can click and we can see they are affected by the Life Untold burn. They will lose 6 hit points per second for the next 10 seconds. and this is very, very painful, especially to enemy minions that are in the way. The one downside to this ability, it's kind of an ism of the engine that's being used, is that units that die because of the burn damage from negative HP regeneration, such as the Life Untold modifier, actually don't cause a kill. This can be a good way to lower the wave, but some extra care has to be taken to make sure that you actually get the final hit if you are the Oathbroken. Let's go to the two other abilities of the Oathbroken as well. Now, the first ability to note is Daybreak. It stuns and then slows a target. Let's take a look at Daybreak, shall we? The stun is immediate, but you can get out of it very quickly. The slow, on the other hand, decays for a short period of time. Alongside the sharpshooters hit the knees, this means that the Oathbroken has one of the truly great CC abilities inside of the game, and stunning and slowing an opponent can combine with a lot of the other characters we've mentioned to give a speed control deficit or buff that makes it impossible for your opponent to deal with. The second ability is a bit more interesting and has a lot of nuance, and it is a Shackle Broken. It reduces the armor on whatever you strike, but it also increases the speed of that character that is struck. In simple terms, whatever you strike will lose its armor and be more susceptible to damage going forward. However, it will also be faster, and the part that makes it interesting is you can apply it to yourself. So if we press W and click ourselves, we note that we become very fast. We have actually gained 0.5 movement speed, 5 levels worth of movement speed for a period of time. But note that the cost of this was hefty. In addition to dealing ourselves some amount of damage, we also have gone from 3 plus 4.5 due to Life Untold to 3 minus 2.5. You are making this exchange of damage and armor, and you get to choose whether it's on yourself or on the Oathbroken or on your opponents. And that kind of situational awareness is going to make playing with the Oathbroken interesting. But the Oathbroken is only about half a character without their ultimate, so we're going to go ahead and buy the ultimate Burden to Bear. Now, you'll notice a lot of abilities become active and a lot of curiosities start to happen. We're going to go over these somewhat quickly. When you activate Burden to Bear, the Oathbroken gains a tremendous amount of damage, changes form, and gains hit point regeneration by transforming into a giant werewolf, but it will lose mana over time. While in this form, it has a couple of abilities. It can press S for Knight's Beckon, which does a massive smash of damage around itself. You can transform it by pressing F to the Beast Within, which gives it bonus movement speed at the cost of reduced damage, but it allows itself to attack more quickly. Notice how much slower we are now as a werewolf than before when we were a very powerful and fast wolf. But also notice the effect of damage and the attack speed that's being displayed. Let's give you an example of what the Knight's Beckon looks like. And there's a massive smash. Now, you may have to transform out of werewolf mode because you want to get back to having some mana. Note that your mana is regenerating negatively. You are losing it while you are in werewolf form. In order to do that, you will have to free yourself, the ability that transforms you from being a werewolf back into being an Oathbroken, so that you can gain access to mana again. This also regains your access to the CC abilities for a Shackle Broken and Daybreak. So you do have conditions on when you have access to all of your abilities and must make concessions in order to have access to the right one. The werewolf can remain in its form even if you don't have any mana, but that means it can't activate any abilities except to transform back. And while this may be useful as a pseudo unit, you can get a lot more value out of the Oathbroken by using its plethora of abilities. Now, there's a lot to control and to manage here, but I'm going to posit even one more that we can talk about: No Salvation. No Salvation can only be activated in werewolf form, but it stuns a target and removes all of their armor. So let's go ahead and see it active. Let's go over here. Notice that we have stunned and removed all the armor of this spider with 6 armor, and note that we have not lost the life untold modifier. We are actually gaining health despite taking a lot of damage. Note the health that we are gaining even as we are being hit by this absolutely massive tower damage of 75. We are going down to about 40 before regaining some each time, and it's possible that you can stay in this form for a long while. One of the big challenges, and you may have already noticed it by the number of abilities that are grayed out right now, is that for all of its ability and unique crowd control effects, the complexity of the Oathbroken can get in the way. It doesn't have access to everything at the same time in very Niko-like fashion, and that means you have to make a decision as to what abilities you use and you care about. You will also have noticed that his base mana regeneration rate is very poor. While he benefits from being paired alongside someone like the mage who can give him passive mana regeneration, he himself has very poor mana scaling, and so he will often find himself low on mana and low on ability. That is, if you just use the abilities and spam them out, you will find often that you don't have access to the ones that you need, even though his tool set and his skill abilities allow you to have access to a great deal of flexibility. But if you're willing to overcome that challenge, be a bit conservative with the use of your mana, and want someone who is an excellent lane bully and is very self-sufficient and good at tearing apart smaller or fledgling armies, you should consider playing the Oathbroken. We're going to break the rules a little bit, and we're not going to use this little area over here to start as we talk about the final hero, the Druid or Druidess. The Druid or Druidess is really defined by what value they provide to an army, and so we're going to get inside of some waves so that you can see that. While the Druidess doesn't have any passive effects, it really is an army-focused, healing, AoE healing spellcaster. You'll notice that it doesn't have any mana. Its abilities are instead on a cooldown. So let's go over one that it does have while we're waiting for the wave to spawn. Its first ability that we want to talk about, W, is A Tree Falls, and it summons Timber. Timber is a legendary wolf with lifetime. Every time that Timber deals damage, it slows units that are struck by it, and it does reasonable damage as well. Combined with its high 3.5 movement speed, Timber is more than capable of exploring the map, finding out where your opponent's heroes are, what they are, but you don't want to run it into anything, as anytime it dies, your opponent is going to get access to additional gold. Nevertheless, it is a great scouting tool, completely free if it doesn't die, and is excellent at giving you the intel that this slower unit, this Druidess, will need. Now we're going to cast one of our healing abilities, Leaf of Envy. Leaf of Envy summons a totem that fires 3 times. Each time that it fires from this totem, it is a healing pulse that provides extra healing to all allied units in range. It also slows units that are within range that are enemy units, and if an enemy is within the epicenter during the 3rd pulse, they are completely stunned. It is very difficult to land the stun over here for Leaf of Envy, but the healing is much easier in comparison to land as it ignores collision entirely, and getting the slow might be what you need to allow your opponents to gank your lane and help you turn over a bad 1v1 scenario. The second ability now talked about, we'll go over to the third and final ability before ultimates, Twisted Nature. Twisted Nature buffs an area such that all of your allied units in that area gain 2 damage and 1.5 hit point regeneration for 60 seconds. Now, I do mean it gains that for a very long time, and look, the area is very generous. This can also stack with healing, such as the likes of Leaf of Envy, and this affects allied heroes, allied units, your own units, the Druidess themselves. And what you've got when you combine all of this together is that the Druid, just from base ability, has a lot of scouting information and is actually excels when it comes to making sure that your lane is supported, stacks up, and is a huge problem for your opponent. We can already see that the comparatively low damage that has been provided by the Druidess in pushing this lane doesn't matter because our own units are simply not dying, and we can reapply stacks as we get access to them because we are a cooldown-based spellcaster. Now, all of that focused, I want to show you something interesting about the Druidess. The Druidess is a character, and the only one right now, the only hero, who has access to not one but two ultimates, but unlike Niko, can use both of those ultimates. These ultimates are called Life Gives and Life Takes. Life Takes gives extra hit points and damage, and once we activate Life Takes, we deal 40 damage instantly and send out pulses of damage that do additional damage going forward. This is really good at helping to deter large army combat in an area, not able to kill armies by itself, but something reminiscent of, say, a Starfall. Let's go ahead and activate it so we can see. Note all of the units in here are going to be taking damage over time, right? Notice they're continuously taking damage, specifically from the effect of the ultimate. And while we weren't able to kill them outright, you can see how this much damage in this much of an area poses an enormous problem to the enemies of the Druidess. But that's not exactly the only thing to show. I did mention, after all, there is a second ultimate. So let's go get the second ultimate over here in the bottom right, or crypt or bar. The ultimate Life Gives. Life Gives is almost like Tranquility from Warcraft 3, if you are familiar, in that it gives hit point regeneration to all enemies, or rather to all allies that are within range. And this is phenomenally powerful. Let's go ahead and wait for some things to stack up so we can demonstrate it maybe a little bit better. Let's go. Notice that while we had a red aura previously, we now have a green aura, and all of the allies in range are continuously being healed. The part that makes the Druidess interesting is that these abilities can be combined. You can, in fact, have both ultimates at once and activate both ultimates at once, creating an area during which all enemies will be damaged if they approach and have their damage reduced, while all allies nearby will be healed and will otherwise be buffed. This combination of buffs, better together than separated, means that the ultimate cost of playing the Druidess could be very high, especially since there are two abilities, both ultimates, that you'll want both of. The benefit of not being a spellcaster with mana, however, does mean that the Druidess is very cooldown reliant, and while it's phenomenal when you're on this side of it and pushing a massive wave and doing insane damage that no one can believe, the downside is that the Druidess doesn't have very many offensive tools. Even Timber is not actually that strong after all, and if you have a wave pushing against you, or you are fighting against enemies and you are receiving the wave or receiving an opponent's army, it can be difficult to feel like you have a direct impact. But if you appreciate the subtle game plan of buffing armies and making sure that minor stat increases are nevertheless going to help you carry the game, and helping to move on a MOBA style macro where you can control how the lanes move and how strong they are, then the Druidess as the final hero of AnarKings might be right up your alley. In any case, I would encourage you to give them a try.